back, guys. How you guys doing today? I'm going to be checking out Ancient Rome in 20 minutes. This is going to be a very strange setup. This is the first time I'm ever using a green screen. You guys can tell me how you feel about this, whether I should be using this from time to time. I would like to know what you guys think. I want you guys' opinions about it, because the whole thing is just so stressful right now for me. It's so, I have to set it up so much, and I'm actually confused how it's going to turn out, whether my software is even good enough to cut it out. I don't know, but I'm just going to do it today for the first time. Let's see how it turns out. Hope you guys have your drinks ready, because I have mine. I'm not sure whether I should be allowing the names of this drink to show.
Here are the letters the Romans gave us. And here are the countries whose languages derive from Latin. Today they cover half the world.
Wow.
As for the ancient Romans, the boundaries of their state encompassed their entire civilization. The Roman peace, or Pax Romana, serves as the first example of globalization. Let's take a walk across 12 centuries of the Roman history. And yes, those numerals are also a Roman legacy.
Yeah, Roman numerals. I'm aware of that one. Everybody's aware of that.
What is Rome? A city on 7 hills, capital of Italy. But that is today. And 2,000 years ago, there it is. Another 1,000 years ago, there. A tiny tribal settlement of the Latins by the river Tiber.
That's crazy. Which literally means that the empire fell. Like, I mean, most people know that the empire fell anyway. Like, people always try to equate the current United States with ancient Rome, talking about how the US will soon collapse, as the US is the superpower right now. The American empire would soon collapse the way things are going, and all the things that people are arguing about, the division and all that and all that. That is not really something I can really say much about, because I've never left my country. I've never gone to the US, so I can't really speak on it. But this is really interesting to see.
Settlement of the Latins by the river Tiber. How did this manage to conquer the world? First, it was lucky with its neighbors. To the north, the Etruscans of modern Tuscany, a mysterious people whose language has never been fully deciphered. To the south, Greek colonies. These peoples all traded with each other. It was at the crossroads of their trade routes that Rome appeared. From the very start, Rome has been an open city, a safe haven for outcasts, murderers, runaway slaves. Rome offered migrants a unique opportunity to become fully fledged citizens. This will make Rome the largest metropolitan city of the ancient world. The Romans themselves believed they were descendants of refugees from the Middle East who had survived the Trojan War. Romulus and Remus were the great-grandchildren of the Trojan hero Aeneas. Nursed by an Italian she-wolf, the brothers quarreled where to site the future world capital. Romulus killed Remus, gave his name to the city, and became its first ruler. As legend has it, there were 7 kings, each of which enjoyed a lengthy reign and left some beneficial legacy. A calendar, a sewer system, or the Capitolium, a temple to the senior god Jupiter. Much of what the Romans later became famous for, aqueducts, bridges, perhaps even the gladiatorial games, were borrowed from the Etruscans. This people had invented the Latin alphabet by adapting the Greek letters for their own needs. It's not surprising that their last kings were Etruscan. Rome borrowed her military and government organization from them, while maintaining her stern, patriarchal simplicity. In 509, Rome was shaken by a sex scandal. The son of King Tarquin the Proud raped the chaste Lucretia. Tarquin was expelled, making him the last king of Rome.
Wow.
The Romans decided to prevent any such concentration of power ever again. From 509 onwards, they elected 2 consuls to serve a year apiece, instead of a monarch. The consuls were controlled by the Senate. This consisted of 300 fathers, patres in Latin, hence the term patricians. Those not so lucky to be born into the right families joined the plebs. Even if they were as rich as patricians, they were not entitled to take up positions in the state.
That's funny.
It is in the 200-year struggle for these...
Is that where that particular word comes from? I've heard that name, plebs. Plebs is like people that are insignificant, right? I think that is the meaning of it. You guys can help me down in the comments. So, is that where the word comes from? That is funny.
Rights that the Republic, literally meaning public thing, will be formed. The plebeians would make up the backbone of the army, and to have their own way, they would threaten the fledgling state with emigration to a neighboring hill. Each time, the scared patricians caved in, introducing, for instance, the special position of a representative or tribune of the plebeians. These had the right to veto any decisions of the consuls. One of the main achievements of the struggle was the publication of the first written laws. By 287 BC, the plebeians had achieved complete equality of rights with the patricians. The unity of Rome found its best expression in the formula Senatus Populusque Romanus, the Senate and the Roman people, which still adorns the manhole covers in Rome.
That is great. That is just mad. Since that time...
In 390 BC, the history of Rome could have come to an end.
I would love to visit all these kind of cities, all this, especially Europe. I do like the US, but if I ever got the chance to, if I ever was able to afford leaving my country just for a visit or for an adventure, I would take a European trip first, because Europe has so much history, so much historical sites that, you know, has a lot of context to the whole thing, and I would like to video it and experience all that stuff. That would be really fun. That would be really fun. But I don't think that will ever happen in my lifetime. I don't know. I know I'm sounding negative, but that seems like a very big dream. But a man can dream, right?
In 390 BC, the history of Rome could have come to an end. The city was unexpectedly taken by the Gauls. The guard dogs had sensed no danger, for which they would be crucified every year since. Geese awoke the last protectors of the Capitoline Hill fortress instead, saving Rome from complete destruction. The shaken Romans conducted a military reform. The Roman legion was divided into manipuli, making it more mobile in battle. The Roman army spent the next 100 years in constant wars. Instead of simply imposing a tribute on the conquered, the Romans would enter into a treaty of alliance with them, and the loyal allies supply Rome with a never-ending stream of recruits. Thanks to this, the Roman legions were able to stand their ground in battle with the most efficient fighting force of the time, the all-conquering Macedonian phalanx, led by Pyrrhus, a relative of Alexander the Great.
Oh, okay.
The last stronghold of resistance in Italy, the Greek city of Tarentum, then hired the most costly and celebrated contemporary warlord of the time to defend.
When you say a relative, is it descendant or before Alexander the Great? I'm always confused about this timeline. I think... Oh, okay. Alexander the Great was AD, right? Alexander the Great was AD. The Roman Empire was BC. I think I'm right, because Julius Caesar was before Christ. So I'm very sure of that one. But I'm still confused. Alexander the Great should have been... I think my next video will be about Alexander the Great. Some people have told me to check out the guy's history, all parts. So a video was recommended to me a long time ago, but the video is just so long, 1 full hour. It's just something that I'm always very scared of doing because of, you guys know, I don't have lights in my country, so I have to try and manage.
Hence Roman expansion. Having conquered Tarentum and reached Sicily, Rome now had to take on a much more dangerous adversary. Carthage, Lord of the Mediterranean.
Watch that one.
The Romans called the Phoenicians of Carthage Punics, hence the Punic Wars.
The Punic War, yeah.
They were fought over the next 100 years. In 149 BC, Rome had taken the greater part of Punic territory and that of their allies, but after each defeat, the trading power of Carthage would rapidly recover. Senator Cato the Elder began to finish every speech with the same refrain: Carthage must be destroyed, and so it was done. The city was wiped out, all of its population was enslaved, allegedly plowing salt into the earth as an eternal curse. Also in 146 BC, the Romans wiped out another city, Corinth, making Greece and Macedonia Roman provinces. Rome appropriated the colossal riches of the disintegrating empire of Alexander, but the patriarchal simplicity of Rome succumbed to the sophisticated Greek culture.
Wait. Dissipating... What's the English? Dissipating empire of Alexander. That means Alexander was before Roman Empire. Man, this thing is so confusing, man. Like, this timeline is always so confusing. I have to check out Alexander the Great. finally to check out his full history. I've already watched a video about him. I thought it was always Eddie. That is crazy, man. I'm just confused.
Came in effect a second state language. The Roman nobility busied itself learning new words, hexameter, history, rhetoric. Cicero, the most famed orator of Rome, would come to model his speeches on those of the Greek Demosthenes. However, across this immense territory, full rights were only afforded to the Romans themselves. Even other Italians, the majority of the military, had no citizenship rights. These would demand equality, declare war, and win the right to take part in managing the state. This was a total game changer. While ancient Greece remained a collection of squabbling city-states, Rome gradually extended citizenship rights to the conquered, laying down the basis for an empire.
I have a feeling that the likes of the US, UK, countries that give out citizenships to people that maybe like refugees or people that come to the country as immigrants, I think maybe that particular custom was gotten from. I think a lot of customs that we have in the modern world is derived from the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was very, very probably the most vital empire in the history of the world. Like, it's crazy. It's really, really crazy.
Having conquered half the world, Rome fell victim to globalization. Cheap grain and an inflow of unpaid slave labor bankrupted the small farmers. These rushed into the cities and joined the ranks of the proletariat, those who have nothing to lose except their own offspring. At the same time, the rich grew 100 times richer, having bought land from the ruined peasants for a song.
What does that remind you of? What does that remind you of? The modern world. And I hear a lot of it with Americans, people talking about how the rich are getting richer. The wage gap is becoming larger and larger and larger every day. What that looks like something. Looks like something. I would argue that that happens everywhere. My country is probably even worse than the US in that regard. But the US is like the beacon of hope. The US is supposed to be the beacon of the world. You know, if the US collapses, most of the world is going to collapse. There's a reason why they call the US president the leader of the free world. There's a reason for that. So, it's something that is very, very interesting to think about. With the way the Roman Empire was, it has a lot of similarities with the current United States. I'm just saying.
Who's except their own offspring. At the same time, the rich grew 100 times richer, having bought land from the ruined peasants for a song. Previously united, the Senate and the Roman people split into two hostile camps. The tribunes of the people, the Gracchi brothers, would try to reconcile them. They proposed granting excess public lands to the impoverished peasants and suggested free distributions of bread to the poor. The disgruntled senators decided to suppress the Gracchi movement by force, killing the brothers and several thousand of their allies. Rome was gripped by civil wars. Social mobility for the proletariat was offered by Gaius Marius, a popular general. He began enrolling the proletariat into the army with a promise of a grant of land at the end of service. This would make the legions personally devoted to their generals. In 49 BC, two outstanding generals fought over Rome.
Julius Caesar.
Gnaeus Pompeius had won the eastern provinces for Rome, including restless Judea, cleared the Mediterranean of piracy, defeated Spartacus' slave revolt, and justifiably added the title Great to his name. Gaius Julius Caesar had conquered Gaul. Nowadays, they would call it genocide. He butchered 1 million Gauls and enslaved as many more. He went on to defeat the Germans and then invaded Britain. According to the law, a general had to dismiss his legions before returning to Rome, and in return have his moment of glory, a triumphal entry into the capital to the applause of the citizens. Caesar performed a hitherto unseen maneuver. He refused to submit to the Senate, and having crossed the Italian border, the river Rubicon, marched his legions to Rome.
Wow.
It would take him several years to defeat Pompey the Great and his other rivals, pitting Roman legions against each other. In the process, Caesar annexed new territories and gave Cleopatra the Egyptian throne. After a romantic cruise along the Nile, she would give birth to Caesarion, or Little Caesar. On his return, Caesar would add Imperator, or Emperor, to his name, title originally meaning victorious commander, and gain control of all political positions: consul, tribune of the people, and dictator. Rumors spread that Caesar wanted to declare himself king. Conspiracy was brewing in the Senate, and Caesar was assassinated. Caesar left his wealth, quite unexpectedly for all concerned.
Wait. I thought... Wait. The way they're talking about these things, almost like, because Caesar ruled for a long time, right? At least it was during this period that, I think, was it not during this period that Jesus was alive? I mean, if you want to go by the Bible, because he said, "Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar." That means Caesar was ruling the empire at the time, right? Because from what I just saw there, Jerusalem, that is Israel, was also conquered by the Romans. So this is so like, I'm actually surprised he died so quickly. I guess maybe the video is because it's speeding up the timeline, I guess. But thinking about it now, I thought he actually ruled for a very long time. Probably ruled till he was old. I didn't know he was assassinated. Wow. I mean, I love this channel. I learn every day, man. Damn.
Conspiracy was brewing in the Senate, and Caesar was assassinated. Caesar left his wealth, quite unexpectedly for all concerned, to his grandnephew, 19-year-old Gaius Octavius. This Octavian immediately joined in the power struggle. In 31 BC, he defeated his last rival, the warlord Mark Antony, who likewise had an affair with Cleopatra. The lovers would take their own lives.
This Cleopatra really was around the place, man. And for some reason, it's always a very interesting thing when people hold her in high regard. I don't know, like, at least the little story that I know about her, the little history I know about her, did she really conquer any place? She didn't conquer any. I think most of the things that she achieved was because she kind of slept her way to the top. Kind of. At least the little I know. Maybe I don't know enough. I don't know. Maybe I should go and watch the Cleopatra documentary that was just made by Netflix. The one that was clearly not accurate because of the whole race swap thing. And I mean, as a black person, I'm supposed to be happy, but I feel if you want to cast black people in roles, write original characters that are black, or portray original characters that are actually black. There are a lot of them, like that way, big historical figures. But I think I guess Hollywood just don't want to put themselves through all that stress.
Octavian was left sole ruler of a vast territory. Julius Caesar ruled for 4 years. Octavian, assuming the title Augustus, meaning the venerable or the great, ruled for an endless...
This can't be right. 4 years. Only? Jesus Christ. Wait. I thought Julius Caesar had a very, very long history. Julius Caesar had a very long history, right? Am I missing it up here? He had a very, very long history. Except maybe most of his history was his conquests, right? Maybe that is what it is. It was mostly his conquests. I think that was most of his history. So by the time he finally conquered and became the ruler, quote unquote, then he was killed after 4 years. Okay, that kind of makes sense. That could make sense. Maybe most of his life he was basically like a conqueror. Okay, yeah. Okay. That should be it. Because most times when people always try to bring up who are the greatest conquerors in history, most of the time the top 3 is always Alexander the Great, obviously, number 1. Then it's always a toss-up between Julius Caesar and Genghis Khan. So, okay. That makes sense.
43 years. He didn't formally abolish the Republic. He simply took control of all possible positions, making his power almost absolute. But he modestly called himself Princeps, the first senator. And even though skirmishes with barbarians continued along the borders, inside them the period of Pax Romana set in, a period of peace and stability that was to last 200 years. The empire experienced an economic upswing. Bread was distributed for free to 200,000 people. On Augustus' orders, a 500-meter basin was dug at the very center of the capital, where 3,000 gladiators mimicked sea battles on wheeled, sea-going vessels. In Rome, construction was booming.
That means it was during Augustus' period that they used to have the whole gladiator stuff. Okay. Where the likes of Spartacus and the rest of them,
Multi-story districts were growing. Augustus had to introduce height regulations, limiting skyscrapers to 6 floors. And still the citizens were unhappy. They complained about traffic jams, pollution of the waters of the Tiber, and high rents. The golden century of poetry dawned. Maecenas, a quasi-minister of culture, allocated special grants to praise the value of the state. Temples would be built in the honor of Augustus, and even a month was named after him. Thus, the cult of the Roman emperors was emerging. They would come to be...
August? Don't tell me August was from Augustus. What the hell? I've learned so much in this video. So many things I've never heard before in my life. So August was from Augustus. So don't tell me that. If that is the case, tell me that in the comments. Wow, the Roman Empire was incredible. Crazy. Augustus. August. Don't tell me other months were named after that.
Venerated alongside Mars and Jupiter. After Augustus' power became hereditary, the senatorial opposition has left us vivid portraits of the first emperors. Suspicious Tiberius unleashed terror under the pretext of the law on treason. Under this law, any action could be deemed offensive. It was enough not to sufficiently praise the emperor or pay at a brothel with coins bearing his portrait. In distant Judea, a preacher refusing to worship the emperor as God was crucified. Caligula wanted to make his horse a consul. A scholar and gourmet, Claudius, was too occupied with feasting and the reforming of the alphabet to keep an eye on court intrigue. One of his wives, Messalina, was giving women of easy virtue a run for their money in the brothels, and the other, Agrippina, poisoned Claudius with mushrooms to enthrone her son from another marriage, Nero. Nero, believing that he was a born actor, not an emperor, would later kill his own mother, and then allegedly the apostles Peter and Paul. Then he again, allegedly, set fire to Rome so as to...
Apostles Peter and Paul. What? Let me hear that again.
Born actor, not an emperor, would later kill his own mother, and then allegedly the apostles Peter and Paul. Then he again, allegedly, set fire to Rome so as to read the verses on the fall of Troy during the blaze. He would accuse the first Christians of arson and initiated their...
Wait. The person that was crucified, don't tell me that is Jesus. I know they said a preacher. He did not mention the name Jesus. I don't know. So that name has become political these days. I really do not understand. But whatever. Don't tell me that is the person. That is Jesus Christ. Wow. This whole timeline is so confusing. Okay, so it was during Augustus' period that Jesus was alive. It was during that period. Okay, so so Jesus was referencing Julius Caesar as just like how people say Uncle Sam. Is that what it is? That means Julius Caesar was not alive during Jesus' period. It was just being referenced as the emperor or as the ultimate emperor. Man, this thing is so...
Persecution. And finally, he took his own life. Most details of this era are known from Tacitus, a historian and senator who observed the degradation of republican institutions. Fate of the empire was now decided not so much by the Senate as by the Praetorian Guards, the emperor's personal security force, created back in the times of Augustus. These suffocated Tiberius with a cushion, slayed Caligula by the sword, and hailed Claudius emperor. In all fairness, at the same time, the empire grew, expanding into new territories. Roman legions conquered part of Britain, where they founded a town called Londinium. Provinces were given a transparent taxation system, and the non-Roman...
Please don't tell me. Don't tell me. Londinium. Londinium. Is that where London is from? I mean, come on. Come on. How many things in the Romans creates? What the hell? I mean, I wouldn't really call this a creation. This is just naming a place. But wow.
Nobility began to enter the Senate en masse. A grandchild of an Italian peasant, Vespasian Flavius would become the founder of the next dynasty. Vespasian and Titus, suppressing the uprising in Judea, committed genocide, again according to modern-day, not Roman standards, and reduced the Temple of Jerusalem to nothing but the Wailing Wall. On a lighter note, Vespasian had a jolly good Roman predisposition. He taxed the collectors of urine at the public toilets. And Titus, the destroyer of Jerusalem, would nevertheless obtain the title of Merciful. After a splendid triumph, he opened the Colosseum for the people. Titus would be called the love and consolation of humankind. And after such festivities had depleted the public treasury, Vesuvius destroyed Pompeii, plague devastated half Italy, and Titus became a god. The 2nd century would go down in history as the era of the good emperors. Trajan was considered by his contemporaries the best emperor ever. Rome became a million-strong city, and the empire reached its largest extent. Rome connected her new territories via a network of paved roads. This system still determines the transport map of Europe. After Trajan's conquest, Hadrian busied himself with defense, erecting massive fortifications in Britain and between the Rhine and the Danube. Pantheon was built in Rome, the first temple to be topped by a massive dome, a real architectural sensation of the day, dedicated to all the gods. Hadrian would also include his lover among them, the young Antinius. More of his images have survived than of any Roman. The last good emperor, the throned philosopher, Marcus Aurelius, would spend most of his reign on military expeditions.
I know this one.
In between battles, he wrote his manifesto for Stoic philosophy, Meditations. It was under Marcus Aurelius' son, Commodus, that the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, came to an end. He preferred a gladiator's glory to the affairs of state. Conspirators had the emperor strangled by a fellow fighter, the slave Narcissus. Rome sank into chaos. The next 100 years brought a sequence of random emperors proclaimed by the army. Taking their turn on the throne were a liberated slave, a fortune seeker who bought the throne at an auction, General Punic Descent who would place statues of the former enemy, Hannibal all over the empire, a Syrian priest of the sun, and a former shepherd who owed his popularity to his powerful physique. In 212, Emperor Caracalla, half North African, half Syrian, granted Roman citizenship to nearly all free subjects of the empire. The idea that you could be a Roman in Judea, in Africa, or any other corner of the empire at all might well be the main legacy of Rome still in use today. By mid-century, Rome was already in the midst of such a crisis that the whole provinces were starting to split off. The Gauls, for instance, proclaimed an empire of their own. Order would be restored by the son of a liberated slave, Diocletian. Having started his career as a soldier, he would end up an absolute monarch, an astonishing example of social mobility. Diocletian split the empire into four, with 4 co-rulers at 4 capitals, situated closer to the frontier. Rome lost its significance. The Senate became a town council. The country was now ruled by an army of officials personally reporting to the emperor. Thus, the ancient world, centered around the concept of a free community and free citizens, came to an end. From the princeps, the first senator, the emperor had become the dominus, a title by which slaves addressed their masters. The citizen became a subject, the warrior turned into a soldier, and the farmer a semi-serf. Diocletian himself resigned from the post of emperor 20 years later and went off to his estate to grow cabbages.
End of the empire.
After Diocletian's departure, the co-rulers were fighting for power. Constantine, the future Saint Constantine the Great, emerging victorious. Before the crucial battle for Rome, he allegedly had a vision of a cross. After this, he made all religions equal. After 300 years of persecutions, the Christians came out of the catacombs and were now entitled to build churches alongside the temples of Augustus and Mars. Constantine would take the cross from Jerusalem to the new capital of the Roman Empire, Constantinople. Theodosius I would make Christianity the official religion and begin to destroy the ancient temples. He would also be the last emperor of a united Roman Empire. His sons split the empire into west and east. The eastern half would live another 1,000 years and is known to us as Byzantium. The western part would fall victim to the great migration of peoples. Rome, founded by migrants, would fall to the onslaught of a new wave of refugees. Ironically, the last ruler of Rome would be called Romulus.
Romulus.
In modern Rome, not far from the Colosseum and the ruins of the Forum, there is a tomb. Its occupant was neither emperor nor senator, but a simple baker called Eurysakes. Likely born a slave into a family of Greek migrants, he later entered into a bread supply contract with the capital and became so rich that he could build such a monument for himself and his wife. Before Rome, in ancient Egypt and elsewhere, or after Rome during the Middle Ages, a man would die in the same station in life as he had been born in. The life and career of Eurysakes is an answer to the question of how Rome was able to create a global state that lasted over 1,000 years.
Wow, man. The Roman Empire, man, it's crazy, man. There were some people that we mentioned that I knew about. I know about some people that we mentioned. I was hoping to hear the intricacies of things that actually happened on the day-to-day that made the empire to collapse. But I guess it was just for 20 minutes. You can't really cover the whole 1,000-year history of an empire in 20 minutes and tell you everything that happened. This was fun. Finally, I've covered the Roman Empire, so the next one should be Alexander the Great. Looking forward to that one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. You guys let me know what you feel about this particular setup. I'm not even sure whether it will even work. I've tested it out, but I don't know how it will be. I hope I don't have a wasted reaction. So hopefully I'll be able to, if I post this, obviously it went very well with the editing. So let's see how it goes. Peace.